Good morning. I'm Cynthia Hutchison with Automation Alley. Thank you for joining us for the New Normal series. If you've been part of this or watched this at all, we are interviewing companies to find out what new normal is going to look like and how we can help make normal feel as close to old normal as possible and what's going to be new and exciting about it. As we do this, we found that through COVID mitigation, some of the very technologies that we're using to enable us to come back to work are going to make us stronger, leaner, and more technological efficient as we move forward. So it's an exciting time in many ways. So we welcome you. Today we have a representative. Today we're going to hear from LightGuide Systems. Now, Paul Risner is the founder, president, CEO of OPS Solutions. I call it LightGuide Systems, and you'll see his sign in the background says that that's their star product, and you'll be learning a little bit about that today. Paul, we're also joined by Chris Bala, and he's the Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing at LightGuide. They're going to talk about augmented reality and how augmented reality plays a role in a safe, efficient return to work, and how their technology with LightGuide empowers workers from the factory floor and an operating room all the way to the remote workplace. A lot of the conversations we've had now have been how to get people safely in and out of your building, how to keep your office safe. One of the trickiest things in this COVID environment is going to be a little more involved with the actual manufacturing floor. And LightGuide Systems technology works on that manufacturing floor platform. And it's an important technology to understand about how augmented reality could overlay with what you do. Good morning. Welcome, Paul.
Good morning, Cynthia.
Nice to see you. And welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Cynthia. Great to be here. Thanks for hosting us.
Now, Chris, I know that a lot of the technologies that LightGuide has developed are really helping to address these unprecedented challenges. You know, how does distributed manufacturing, and we're going to talk about distributed manufacturing, we're going to talk about remote access. Can you talk a little bit about the overview of what LightGuide Systems does?
Sure, be happy to. In a nutshell, really, we're the pioneer and leader in industrial augmented reality for manufacturing. And really any manufacturing process. Paul and I like to say, whether you're building powertrains, pacemakers, or even pizzas now, LightGuide works very effectively to guide complex manual operations simply by providing the right information at the right place and the right time. So that's who we are and what we do.
Wonderful. I know that in previous conversations, you wanted to share a couple slides. Do you want to pop in a slide about how some of this works? Do you want to do that now?
Sure, I'd love to. Let me share. And really, great. Are we up and running? Perfect.
Yep.
Especially when we talk about this new normal following the pandemic crisis. Seems to be encouraging data, as of right now, and we hope that we're through the worst of it. But it does imply, several high impact areas that all companies, manufacturing companies, even service or non-manufacturing companies, need to focus on. And I've put these up in a slide, and sorry, it's a little wordy, but let's just talk highlights. Number one, retraining, right? We've had long shutdowns. Our most valuable asset, which are our human assets, our employees, the men and women who build products every day, have been off for weeks, if not months. And, when they come back, manufacturers are going to have to retrain them and refresh those skills, those important skills, so that they're certified and ready to roll. Or, of course, if you're bringing new employees into your factory environment, of course, training applies equally as well. So retraining is key for the restart. Low density operations is number two. So think about how we're all social distancing in our private lives, and now we have to extend that to the factory floor. We literally, in many cases, have to double the space between workstations from as little as 2 to 3 feet. In fact, one customer that we have that makes consumer products, white goods, if you will, they have people every 18 inches, literally shoulder to shoulder. That has to change, right? And we have to now space workstations anywhere from 6 to 10 feet apart. And this is where that makes work more complex, right? I, as that employee now have to do maybe 2 or 3 operations where previously I only had to do 1 operation. So that's key. Sanitizing the workplace, disinfection requirements, right? Ensuring that every workstation is properly cleaned and sanitized on a regular basis. In our company, we've instituted simple red and green cards. So if a workstation's been occupied, we flip that card to red, and when it's sanitized, it's flipped back to green. And LightGuide can play a role in ensuring that workstations and the workplace in general is properly sanitized. 2 more. The new requirements for not only personal protective equipment, PPE, but also the health screening. So we're all hearing about, especially the automotive OEMs, they've instituted, screening for every employee that comes through the door to have a temperature scan and, complete a quick questionnaire. So there's ways that augmented reality like LightGuide can help that as well, to auto confirm that they've got a mask on, temperature scan, and that they've completed their survey, for instance. And then finally, proper PPE kitting and availability throughout the plant, right? That's an extension of normal kitting or sequencing activities that we do all the time, and it applies equally well to personal protective equipment. So just a quick rundown through these key areas where augmented reality, where LightGuide can really help with this safe and efficient restart.
Thank you. And I want to ask you about a couple of those things because, I've known LightGuide for 6 or 7 years now, and I really found it to be much more interesting when I saw it in real life. So that's the one thing you all can't see now is how this works. So I need you to talk through so we can get visual about it. I saw then an example of a floor marked off in 6-foot increments.
Yeah.
Can you explain how that's done and how simple it is? Because I know it's relatively simple. It's a complex technology, but the application is simple. So people can understand what it is.
Sure. Enough words and enough talking. I could tee up another video if that'd be acceptable.
Yes, yeah, that's fine.
We've got another video, and it will really, I think, bring that to light as well. So just allow me to pull that up, because it really is about how we're now creating safe work zones, right? So I'll just put this slide up and we'll go into presentation mode. Let me come down a few slides here. And this is the concept, right? I mean, of course you can use tape. That's the old-fashioned way. But, identifying and enforcing a safe work zone is a very natural extension of LightGuide for that core operation happening at the station. So as I hit play, you'll see our employee come into this. Get that queued up here again. You'll see our employee come into the, oh boy, sorry.
Maybe not.
Our PowerPoint's giving me not wanting to play this video. So you see this visual display, right? The white keep out zone,
right.
The location where the employee stands. And if anybody comes into that space, we're going to enforce that. Now you can see here, we will enforce the do not enter zone, right? And this is all with projected work instructions, right? So if anybody violates that perimeter, we'll provide both visual and audible alerts in order to ensure that that safe zone is maintained. So hopefully the picture tells the story a little bit better, Cynthia.
It does, and that's one of the things that I've learned when I first saw LightGuide. I've seen it so many times on screens, and the first time I saw it in physical real life, which none of you on a screen can see today, in physical real life is really the excitement of watching people. And one of the things we all did, I think it was in Germany at a trade show, but people from all over the world, and I know most people speak English, thank you all, because we're sloppy Americans, we only speak one language. But even though people speak English, it wasn't their first language. And people from all over the globe would come by and they would stop at the LightGuide and they would build an Amazon and a dot. They would build an Echo Dot. They would stop and build something because they could. And for those of you who don't know, it's really a left to right sequencing or top to bottom so that the light goes to the bin from which you take the product, it goes to the table on which you assemble the product, goes back and forth. And that visual is very helpful for the assembly piece. How is that going to play into more of a remote distribution of the workforce that I think we've talked a little bit about?
Mm-hmm.
Chris or Paul?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, there's always been a lot of activity going on at workstations around the world in manufacturing, but also in hospitals and in a lot of different environments. So wherever people are doing work, that work is becoming more and more important to do, not just right, but with COVID now, you've got the whole different layer of maximizing employee safety under the new guidelines. So it's really important for companies worldwide to be able to see what's going on within their manual operations, no different than they've traditionally been able to do with their automated operations, in order to be able to get data and analytics coming off of these manual operations worldwide to make sure that people are not only building with the highest quality and productivity in manufacturing operations, but now even maximizing employee safety by following the proper guidelines, as Chris mentioned, social distancing, disinfecting workstations properly, etc. So what we're doing now, Cynthia, is taking more of our analytics package, which gives essentially increased traceability for customers and what's happening within their manual processes. Data like cycle times, how often was a workstation disinfected, for instance? How often was a 6-foot work zone violated around that area? All of that now becomes data that gets visible on an enterprise basis. And you can drill into that data worldwide within your operations through many of the standard data tracking and trending tools such as AWS or Siemens MindSphere or other tools like that, that will take the raw data that's coming from LightGuide systems, upload it, and make sure everybody is operating in a very highly productive and quality basis, but also a very safe basis as well.
Thank you. That's a lot of clarity to that. One of the things that I've liked about this is watching that it's traceability and accountability. And I think that, you know, even when Chris showed the example of the floor violating that space, my experience with it is it's not done to be punitive, it's done to be guiding. And you used a word recently in a conversation. Paul and I were talking specifically about some applications for people who are outside the mainstream workforce right now, people with disabilities, people who have not been part of us. And the word you used, Paul, was mind width. So we all talked about our bandwidth capabilities. And Paul talked about how LightGuide systems provides, and I think this is really applicable in the COVID environment, it provides some freedom for your mind width. So that was the term you used, wasn't it? I really like it. So you have more of your mind. Your mind is now freed from the mundane of where you stand and what you do and allowed to be more creative. You want to expand on that?
No, you're exactly right, especially in these COVID days, because what's happening in factories, not just here in Michigan, but throughout the whole world, as the workstations get separated, there is more content that has to be implemented within those workstations. So somebody that may have been, doing 20 steps of assembly for building a fuel injector, for instance, now may have to do 50 steps of assembly on that same fuel injector through that higher content. So the stress level for people on a work floor is actually increasing. What LightGuide can do, very similar to GPS has done, in the driving experience, is it provides a very valuable tool to have an employee be guided through those different steps of a process, whether it's 10 steps, 50 steps, or even 1,000 steps. And so it frees up what we call this mind width, as you say, Cynthia, where people can not now have to try to remember every single step anymore or waste time going to look at paper-based work instructions or even monitor-based work instructions. That information is available right on their natural workflow as they're doing the work, and people get less stressed. Hopefully turnover decreases in a factory because of that. And it does free up the mind to think about what the mind should be thinking about. How do I do this job better? Or what can I do in order to be able to work better with my teammates and things like that, rather than trying to remember every step of the process. So there's a lot of side advantages that have actually been quantified through some of our customers where an employee's well-being can actually improve on a factory.
Thank you. And there's no time more valuable for that than right now, because I think the emotional health of employees is going to be something we really watch unfold over the next few months. I never remind people this at the beginning. It's just because I'm not an on-air personality. We do have Q&A. So if anybody wants to send a question over, please do. I do have a question for you right now. Somebody's asked us, what infrastructural sensors are required to set this up? Where is the information displayed? Is it on Google Glasses or on a TV? Which one of you wants to fill that one?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually, when we started the company in 2005, focused exclusively on projection-based augmented reality work instructions. In other words, high lumen industrial strength projectors. We can use up to 15 of them to wrap a whole vehicle in work instructions if we need to. So it's very scalable. But since then, we've been able to offer LightGuide onto a wearable, such as a Microsoft HoloLens or a Vuzix or some of these other hardware wearables that are out there on the market today. But we'll always choose a projector as our first choice, because in that case, you just wear your normal safety glasses, you step up and everybody can see what you're seeing with guidance of LightGuide through every step of the process. And you don't need to put something on your face in the form of a wearable that somebody maybe has been sweating in and coughing in all day on first shift or other shifts as well. So it's a very safe and a hygienic solution with projection-based augmented reality that's been pretty much our main product line that we've continued to expand over the years. We do have a wearable option, but that is always our second choice, depending upon the mobility requirements of the employee at the work, as well as how often they need to be going into certain areas.
Thank you. Now, what role does 5G, the emerging 5G, what role is that going to play in this technology?
Sure. Great question. LightGuide as a manufacturing aid, right, as an enabling technology, we have to be compliant with any and every industrial protocol. It's very intriguing to think about how 5G, high-speed mobile connectivity, if you will, wireless connectivity, via the evolution of the cellular network, might even bring more use cases, more applicability to how workers can be remotely connected, right? So for instance, and we'll talk maybe a bit more about this, but as work migrates, right now we all move to the factory, but we're already seeing work, not necessarily in the manufacturing floor, but some of us who, maybe work in sales roles or in customer service roles, we're working from home, right? So we're taking advantage of these high-speed connections, whether it's with a wire into the home, or increasingly that will be via enabling 5G technology. Now think about home-based manufacturing, and Paul's going to talk more about this, but to the degree that high-speed 5G becomes pervasive in terms of connectivity, that's yet another enabler for us to really build out the home-based remote work type environment. So it's pretty exciting, really.
That is a great lead, and I want Paul to talk about home-based manufacturing. Who's going to do it? How is it going to work? What's the net result for the company? And
yeah, it's really a great question. On the 5G side of things, every factory, in the environment that people are operating in, every second counts and every penny counts. And so we're really excited about the 5G evolution, because it's going to speed up the information that can get communicated down to the factory floor. And it's always going to make it a lot more important to be able to utilize that speed to drive higher throughput and productivity. How it relates to home-based manufacturing is equally exciting, because what we're seeing, especially in these COVID days, is that it's actually becoming very important to minimize the number of people within a factory wherever you can, in order to be able to reduce the chance of contamination. More people there are within a four-wall environment, the more risk there is. So the more people that can work from home, whether they are, back office type folks, or whether they're actually people that typically assemble at a workstation, it's going to decrease the risk in a factory through fewer people there. So we're actually working on a number of projects now that are taking operations where it applies. It doesn't apply to everything, but if you go on our website, you'll actually see a number of smaller products, hydraulic pumps and things like that, that can actually be assembled very accurately at home through home-based manufacturing with employees that normally would have worked in the factory that can now actually do some of that assembly work or inspection work from home. And so the interconnection capability of being able to interface home-based systems of LightGuide, communicating work instructions literally to maybe somebody's kitchen table or dining room table, building hydraulic pumps, for instance, with all the analytics being uploaded in real time, is very, very powerful. And so it gives manufacturing companies another option to be able to keep their employees that normally work at workstations gainfully employed, but now in some cases doing work from home on smaller products without the requirement to have them be in the factory anymore. And there's a lot of side benefits to that as well. Besides the risk of contamination in a factory, it also decreases traffic on the roads because it also can help improve in lower emissions as a result of that. So there's a lot of side benefits that come from maximizing the number of people that can work from home wherever possible.
Thank you. You know, we've often talked Industry 4.0 in general, the overlay of Industry 4.0 and, you know, and it's arguably is the democratization of everything. You know, the democratization of opportunity. So, but we've actually not seen that in manufacturing. The democratization of my company. I was able to work from home, you know, it was nothing but using Teams more. We use Teams some in the office, but once you can't go into the office, you just use Teams all the time from home. But my job didn't involve me handing off a physical part to somebody else, all of that. So this is the first that I've seen what I would call the democratization of manufacturing, where you're taking that same flexibility that office employees have and giving that opportunity to people on the manufacturing floor. Now they won't manufacture cars from home, but I think you're even, if I'm not mistaken, aren't you doing a trial part that ends up in a car for an automotive supplier?
Well, actually, we're doing a little bit of that, but we've been actually doing home-based mask manufacturing, making cloth-based masks in order to be able to help out local nursing homes, even hospitals, until they could get their normal PPE stocked and on their shelves. So as a team, we've been able to build over 500 cloth-based masks, you know, all with our own employees working from home with LightGuide systems and all of the analytics, you know, that went along with that. So it was really a great test of this model, and now we're ready to scale it on a worldwide basis. And we're talking to, as you say, Cynthia, other companies that have certain products that lend themselves very well to home-based manufacturing. So we're excited to get started to deploy that.
Yeah, and I would add a comment. It's a very compelling way to think about, you know, empowering people, you know, democratizing the work, right? Because as you decentralize work, you're going to spur innovation. You're certainly going to spur opportunity, you know, maybe across a lot of different socio-demographic cuts that, you know, previously were maybe, you know, prohibitive to travel or whatever, you know, whatever that you know, roadblock might have been. So yeah, it's really a great way to think about it, and I appreciate that paradigm, Cynthia.
You know, when we started, when we all came home, when March, whatever, depending on what state you live in, when we all started the work from home initiatives and the stay home, stay safe, early on, I heard from companies, you know, help me become a PPE manufacturer. I need help. I need to find a way to make money. Then it turned into help me get the money that the government owes me, and that, you know, that conversation. Now for about 6 weeks, it's been, how do I get back to work? How do I do it safely? How do I do it effectively? How do we become who we were before? And I think that's where we're excited about having companies like LightGuide Systems to talk about what is it that's next. Your website, you know, when you open up your website, you lead with "we solve problems." Was this, COVID wasn't a problem you anticipated solving. So how did you get from we solve problems to here's a solution for COVID?
Yeah, Cynthia, that's a great question. And I'll be honest with you, the best way to answer that is with the video that Chris was showing earlier today. So this is the one that I think really does a great job of answering your question. These workstations in factories around the world, as I mentioned, have always had a lot of activity involving part kitting, inspection, whatever it might be. But now we've got this whole employee safety part that comes into play. So you can see what we're doing here. It's very interactive. The employees working at the workstation, we actually project. We can do this in different languages. We can do it with different barriers. We project that safe distance area around the work zone while the employee is doing the work. And there's a 3D sensor so that as the employee is doing the work and being guided through an assembly operation in this case, if an employee does step into that zone, it alarms and it also provides a visual. And, we can also do even more traceability where we can possibly record who that employee was that walked into the safe zone. So, what we're doing here is actually deploying Industry 4.0 technologies that Michigan manufacturers and others around the world have always deployed in a way now that extends it off of our normal manufacturing assembly and other types of airproofing to airproofing employee safety in a factory now, and just deploying these technologies in a slightly different way. So very, very important in order to be able to expand what we're doing with just normal augmented reality work instructions in general to be able to maximize employee safety under this new normal environment.
It's funny. I was glad you played the video because when we talked about 5G, I was going to suggest to Chris that one of the ways in which 5G could help is the video would play, every time, because we all want to we want to get to the point where the video we have teed up always plays. And
it always plays. Yeah,
we're all about 70% on that.
There you go. Yeah. Well, I think my PowerPoint needed to restart here. It didn't get its morning cup of coffee, so
yeah. Well,
Paul jumped in there.
I've got mine with me here. So your technology is used beyond typical manufacturing now. Have you noticed, are there doors open to new industries? What's happened again, post-COVID, what's happened to make your world different and your opportunities different? And are you able to help more industries?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, not surprisingly, we're Detroit area, born and bred company. So we've always led in automotive, both the OEMs and the tiered supply base. That's extended, over the years since, Paul founded the company into heavy equipment. So think, heavy duty truck, construction, agriculture. Think aerospace and defense is an important sector for us, or vertical market. And increasingly now, we're seeing, pharmaceuticals, food preparation companies, even the quick serve restaurant environment itself, the store environment itself. Stores are having to pivot, or restaurants, storefronts are having to pivot. They can't invite their customers in, but oftentimes they're still preparing on site and then staging and either delivering through one of the third-party delivery services like Uber Eats or DoorDash, or even customers coming curbside for pickup. So there's a lot of opportunities that we see, that our customers see, for LightGuide to do what it does on the manufacturing floor, which is to drive productivity, quality, and certainly training effectiveness, just to name three. So
yep.
a lot of opportunities.
And if I could add to that, Cynthia, just like Automation Alley, we're a member of the World Economic Forum. And, there's been a number of web conferences they've had recently with manufacturing companies around the world. And everybody wants to maximize flexibility, whether you're in automotive or food or aerospace or whatever, because we don't know exactly what is going to be happening here under this new normal going forward. So flexibility is becoming one of the key goals, even more so than ever, of manufacturing companies around the world. Technologies like LightGuide systems allows companies to be very, very flexible, and in some cases much more flexible than automation, which tends to be very rigid and kind of monuments on a factory floor. We can help there.
Well, when we do our follow-up interview someday, I want you to talk more even about the actual process of applying LightGuide systems, because I know when I see it, when you think about automation, you then have a corporate investment. Whoever signed off on that automation is invested in keeping it for X number of years because there was an ROI, there was an entire business case built around why you were going to put something in a certain way. When you do it with LightGuide and you simply, and again, I happen to see this in Germany where, you know, I saw people and I was back a half an hour later and there were new demos up. And I said, well, who made those? And they said, oh, we did. It took a few minutes. So that's it. I know I'm not saying it's always a few minutes. That particular application was. But those kinds of technologies are exciting to see that there is a huge amount of flexibility. I'm going to stick with our time. So I'm going to thank you. And I will tell you that you do solve problems. And I think now is a time when we all need problem resolution. And I really appreciate Paul and Chris, you're taking time to join us this morning, and I appreciate the flexibility of LightGuide systems to do new things and help us all go back to work safer. Thank you very much.